Have you ever met someone who never jaywalks, even when the street is completely empty at 3 a.m.? Someone who fills out every form in triplicate, waits for the pedestrian signal no matter what, and feels genuine anxiety if they accidentally take 2 free samples instead of 1? These are the people who always follow rules. Not just the big ones, not just the laws that carry jail time, but every rule, every guideline, every tiny social norm that the rest of us bend or ignore without a second thought. At first glance, they can seem rigid, overly cautious, even a little boring. But once you look beneath the surface, you discover something fascinating. Strict rule following is rarely about the rules themselves. It's about psychology, deep, often unconscious psychological needs, childhood experiences, personality traits, and even brain wiring that make breaking a rule feel as dangerous as jumping off a cliff. Today we're going to explore the hidden mind of the perpetual rule follower. Why are some people wired this way? What are the upsides and the very real downsides? And most importantly, can someone who always follows rules ever learn to loosen up without losing who they are? Part 1. The 5 core psychological drivers. Strict rule following is not one single trait. It's usually a combination of several overlapping psychological forces. Let's unpack the 5 biggest ones. High conscientiousness. The Big 5 personality factor in personality psychology, the Big 5 model is the gold standard. One of those 5 traits is conscientiousness, how organized, responsible, and duty-focused a person is. People who score in the top 10 to 15% on conscientiousness tend to see rules as moral imperatives, not suggestions. For them, a rule is a promise society made to itself to keep chaos at bay. Breaking it, even a tiny one, feels like betraying that promise. Studies consistently show that extreme conscientiousness predicts behaviors like never being late, always reading the full terms of service, and feeling physical discomfort when someone else breaks a rule in their presence. Anxiety and harm avoidance. Many lifelong rule followers have a temperament psychologists call high harm avoidance. Their nervous system is calibrated to notice potential danger faster and more intensely than average. To them, every rule exists for a reason. Someone, somewhere, got hurt or caused a problem, and the rule was created to prevent that. Even if the risk feels minuscule, like getting a $50 parking ticket, the emotional weight of something bad might happen is enormous. Following the rule is simply the fastest way to turn off that internal alarm bell. Early childhood conditioning, the authoritarian parent effect. Decades of research, starting with the famous studies by Diana Baumrind in the 1960s, show that children raised by highly authoritarian parents who demand obedience without much warmth or explanation, often grow into adults who equate rules with safety and love. When you're 5 years old and the only way to get affection or avoid punishment is perfect compliance, your brain learns a powerful lesson. If I follow every rule exactly, I am safe and worthy. If I don't, I am bad and will be abandoned. That blueprint can last a lifetime, even when the parent is long gone. Moral foundations theory, purity, authority, and loyalty. Jonathan Haidt's moral foundations theory tells us that human beings care about 6 moral domains, but we weight them differently. People who always follow rules tend to put extra weight on 3 specific foundations: authority, respect for hierarchy and tradition; loyalty, to the group or society that made the rules; purity/sanctity, keeping things orderly and uncorrupted. When you score high on these 3, a no shoes in the house sign isn't just a preference, it feels morally wrong to ignore it. Cognitive rigidity and low tolerance for ambiguity. Some brains love gray areas, others hate them. People with a low tolerance for ambiguity experience genuine cognitive stress when rules are unclear or when exceptions are allowed. Clear, black and white rules create a predictable world, and predictability feels like oxygen. Research on obsessive-compulsive personality traits, not the same as OCD, shows that rigid rule adherence is often a coping strategy for this kind of mind. Part 2. The adaptive side. Why rule following can be a superpower. Before we talk about the downsides, let's be fair. Strict rule following is not inherently bad. In many situations, it's a massive advantage. In high-stakes professions, pilots, surgeons, air traffic controllers, accountants, extreme conscientiousness and rule adherence literally save lives. The famous Checklist Manifesto by Atul Gawande shows that the best outcomes come when highly trained people still follow basic protocols to the letter. In chaotic or corrupt environments, rule followers often become the moral backbone. Think of the whistleblowers or the bureaucrats who refuse bribes even when everyone else is taking them. Their rigidity protects the system. On a personal level, People who always follow rules tend to have excellent credit scores, clean driving records, stable careers, and lower rates of addiction or reckless behavior. Society quietly depends on them more than we admit. Part 3. The hidden costs, when rule following becomes a cage. But there is a flip side, and it can be painful. Chronic anxiety and guilt over tiny infractions. Many strict rule followers live with a low-level hum of guilt. They beat themselves up for years over a library book returned one day late in 1998. That constant self-policing is exhausting. Difficulty with moral nuance. Real life is messy. Sometimes the right thing to do is technically against the rules, lying to protect someone in danger, speeding to get a bleeding child to the hospital, or bending a company policy to help a struggling coworker. Extreme rule followers can freeze in these moments or make choices that feel technically correct but humanly cruel. Resentment toward rule breakers. Because their obedience often comes at a personal cost, they can feel deep anger toward people who seem to get away with bending rules. This resentment can poison relationships and create an us versus them mentality. Stifled creativity and joy. Rules are, by definition, about what already exists. Innovation, art, humor, and spontaneity usually require breaking or ignoring existing norms at least a little bit. The perpetual rule follower often feels something is missing from life but can't quite name it. The paradox of perfectionism. Many extreme rule followers are also perfectionists. And perfectionism is one of the strongest predictors of burnout, depression, and even suicide risk. The moment they inevitably fail to be perfect, the self-attack can be brutal. Part 4. Real-life profiles. 4 types of rule followers. To make this concrete, let's meet 4 common archetypes. The anxious saint. This person follows rules to keep the world safe and to prove they are a good person. They will remind strangers to wear masks during a pandemic, return excess change to a cashier, and lose sleep if they think they accidentally cut in line. Their inner voice constantly asks, "Am I being good enough?" The loyal soldier raised in a military, religious, or highly traditional family, this person sees rules as the glue that holds their group together. Questioning authority feels like betraying their identity. You'll hear them say things like, "If everyone just followed the rules, the world would work." The control seeker. For them, rules are a way to manage an unpredictable universe. Chaos, literal or emotional, feels terrifying, so they create order wherever they can. Their home, desk, and schedule are immaculate. Breaking a rule, even someone else breaking it, can trigger a panic response because it reminds them the world is not fully controllable. The rigid rebel hater. This type often had a chaotic or neglectful childhood. Rules became their lifeline, the one thing adults couldn't take away. As adults, they police others aggressively because rule breakers feel like a personal threat to the stability they fought so hard to achieve. Part 5. Can a rule follower change? The million-dollar question. If you recognize yourself in this description and you want more flexibility, is change possible? The short answer is yes, but it has to be gradual and compassionate. Step 1. Separate morality from rules. Start by asking, is this rule actually about right and wrong, or is it just a preference someone wrote down? Many rules fall into the second category. Practicing this distinction lowers the emotional stakes. Step 2. Conduct tiny, safe experiments. Choose extremely low-risk rules to bend on purpose. Eat dessert before dinner once. Cross the street when no cars are coming, safely. Return a form one day late with a polite note. Notice the anxiety, but also notice that the world doesn't end. Over time, the brain learns that small deviations are survivable. Step 3. Practice self-compassion. When you fail, perfectionists punish themselves for tiny mistakes. Counter this with deliberate kindness. Write down the infraction, then write 3 reasons why you are still a good person. It sounds cheesy, but it rewires the guilt pathway. Step 4. Borrow flexibility from trusted people. Spend time with friends who have a healthy relationship with rules. Watch how they navigate gray areas without becoming reckless or immoral. Social learning is powerful. Step 5. Therapy when needed. If rule following is tied to obsessive-compulsive tendencies, religious trauma, or authoritarian upbringing, modalities like CBT, ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, or trauma-focused therapy can be life-changing. Closing, the balanced path. Here's the truth no one says out loud. The world needs both kinds of people. It needs the rule breakers, the entrepreneurs, artists, and activists who push boundaries and create what's new. And it needs the rule followers, the ones who show up on time, do the paperwork correctly, and keep the plane from crashing because they double-checked the checklist. The goal is not to turn a conscientious, harm-avoidant person into a carefree rebel. That would be as unnatural and stressful as turning a creative free spirit into a bureaucrat. The goal is integration, learning to hold your natural temperament with pride while adding just enough flexibility to enjoy life, connect deeply with others, and handle the gray areas that adulthood inevitably brings. If you're someone who always follows rules, know this: your diligence is a gift. But you are allowed to give yourself the same grace you so readily extend to the rules themselves. And if you're watching this and thinking of someone in your life who drives you crazy with their rigidity, try seeing the scared or dutiful child behind the behavior. A little understanding goes a long way. Because in the end, every rule follower is just trying to keep the world, and themselves, from falling apart. And honestly, in a universe this chaotic, who can blame them?